Hi, welcome to the California CEDAR sponsored Communities of Practice series. CEDAR, which stands for Collaboration for Effective Educator Development, Accountability, and Reform, is a national center based at the University of Florida and has a mission to support students with disabilities in achieving college and career-ready standards. For those wanting to know more, please visit CEDAR.org. That's CEEDAR.org. This webinar series aims to share information that supports educator preparation programs in redesign efforts grounded in inclusive practice. The topics include teacher performance assessment, preparation and requirements, traumatic brain injury, extensive support needs and inclusion, and dyslexia. And we have more topics coming soon. We hope you find the information and resources helpful.
Welcome to our first of several community practice meetings hosted by CEDAR California. This particular community practice today is going to be focused on clinical practice for supporting students with higher support needs. So that might be students with extensive support needs or what we previously considered the moderate severe credential. But as we know, our clinical practice guidelines and our what support needs are covered on each of the credentials in California have changed so that our previous mild to moderate support needs credential now actually covers supporting students with more significant or extensive support needs. So we wanted to discuss today some of those changes as well as some of the strategies we're using, and then as a community discuss the strategies you guys are using to support clinical practice to cover the wider range of support needs that our teachers now need to be prepared to support. We do have some other upcoming communities of practice. The next one covers the new literacy TPEs, and I'm not remembering the date on that one right now, but that will be coming up.
We haven't scheduled it yet, but we're planning on the end of this month or sometime in May.
Super. And so, before we get started, we want to know a little bit about who's here. I'll say who I am. I know we didn't say that yet, but I'm Sammy Taves. I'm a faculty member at Cal State Northridge in the special education department.
I'll go next. Hi, everybody. I'm Amy Hanreddy, and I'm also in the Department of Special Education at Cal State Northridge.
Hi, I'm Annie Spillane, and I am in the Department of Special Education at University of Massachusetts Global. I see we have about already 30 people in here. So rather than have everybody go through and introduce themselves, if you could put your name and who you're affiliated with, that would be great. Sorry, Sammy. In the chat.
Lots of familiar names. Good to see everybody.
Welcome, welcome. That's great. People from all over. Awesome. Well, welcome everybody. Our plan today is that we are going to cover what our clinical practice guidelines say now here in California, what are some successes, some challenges, and then as a community come up with some new ideas. We want this to be a collaborative space, so please use your Zoom hand or use the chat to ask questions, give information, share something you've been doing. You can use the Zoom hand or the chat to share that, but we do hope that this is a collaborative space.
Oops, I went too fast. So just to let you know who CEDAR is a national center that supports states to align systems in support of students who struggle in schools with a focus on students with disabilities. It's located at the University of Florida, but they operate in a number of states, as you can see here in blue, California being one of them. And it is supported by OSEP grant, I believe is correct. If Kate, if you want to correct me if I'm wrong on that, and it has been going for quite some years now. And they provide wonderful support to do things just like this to help educator preparation programs get together and do better for our candidates. Okay.
Okay, so I'm going to kind of dig us into some of the content that we're going to talk about today. And my role is really to provide us all with just context that is probably familiar to many of the folks here, but to kind of make sure that we're all starting from the same point. So beginning in fall 2022, those of us who have education specialist or special education teacher preparation programs were required to implement our new TPEs for all of our credentials, but specifically we're going to focus today on the mild to moderate support needs and extensive support needs credentials and the significant changes that are happening related to those two areas. So if you look at just to kind of, again, context, if you look at this chart on the left is what it says current, but now is the old mild to moderate disabilities credential, and the eligibility categories that those teachers were authorized to serve compared to the column right next to that, which is the new mild to moderate support needs credential. You can see, as Sammy was referring to, there are now many areas that were added, including multiple disabilities and orthopedic impairment, traumatic brain injury. And then if you look at the same on the right-hand side with the old moderate severe and the new extensive support needs, all of those boxes are checked, right? And there's a lot of overlap between the new mild to moderate support needs and the new extensive support needs. And so what we're really going to focus on is, what does this mean for clinical practice? And what are we all doing and what are we struggling with related to ensuring that candidates are really prepared to teach that full range of students with disabilities that they will be authorized to serve when they finish their credential programs. So we can go to the next slide. So the CTC provides all programs with clinical practice guidelines, and we pulled a couple pieces from those clinical practice guidelines to kind of zero in on today. So this is the first little piece, and you can see in bold the areas that we're gonna keep going back to some of the same things, right? So one is we need to ensure that, of course, when candidates are engaged in clinical practice, that they have the ability to practice and acquire the knowledge and skills included in the TPEs. Now, those TPEs, or teacher performance expectations, cover a broad range of knowledge and skills. And now we're really also looking at this broader range of federal disability categories that are covered under those TPEs. So part of our responsibility in clinical practice is thinking about who do they have immediate access to serve, and then also who do they not have access to right away, and then we need to kind of like think about how to supplement or expand their knowledge related to the full range of students that they can serve under their credential. Go to the next slide. Okay, there's a lot of text here, but this is really about the guidance related to selecting placements for students in clinical practice. And you can see that we just bolded one bullet there, that one of the considerations for our placements is supposed to be the inclusiveness of the school for students with disabilities. So one of the areas that we want to talk about today is what's working and what's not related to ensuring that our education specialist candidates have opportunities to serve students in inclusive settings during their clinical practice. Right. And then kind of along with this, there is guidance in the clinical practice guidelines specific to intern teachers. So our teachers that are already working as the teacher of record and serving students at their schools are really accountable for all of the same TPEs, and almost all of the guidelines that are listed in the clinical practice guidelines apply to intern teachers. There are not exceptions for interns. So we really have to consider, how are we working with their their current schools or placements in order to ensure that they're meeting these requirements, right? And so we have that sites should demonstrate placement of students with disabilities in the least restrictive environment. And then I also have bolded there a focus on interacting with different age groups in both general and special education settings, reflecting the continuum of placement options. And then just on the bottom of that same slide, there's kind of this additional blurb that even though, you know, they're working for a school district, that it still is our responsibility to ensure that they do have that range of experiences and placements. Basically, that final blurb says it is still our responsibility to ensure they're implementing the guidelines. Oh, I think I'm going to skip this part about the support providers, actually. Okay, and then the next two slides are just kind of zeroing in on a couple of the TPEs that are kind of specific to clinical practice, and in particular thinking about that range of students that our candidates are authorized to serve upon the completion of their credential. So because one thing we're really seeing, at least in the program where I work, is that we're really needing to kind of broaden the experiences, because the things that we need to ensure that they're prepared to do are broader, right? And so just under the mild to moderate support needs TPEs, there are several items that are really focused on serving students with complex communication needs, physical disabilities, as well as adapting and modifying curriculum. So historically, often mild to moderate special education teachers were more focused on that systematic and explicit instruction and accommodating curriculum, but maybe had less experience or background in creating modifications for students who might have intellectual or developmental disabilities. And so that's certainly an added emphasis, and it's something that we've been really thinking about as we're designing our field experiences and supporting our interns, is making sure that they have opportunities to do these things. And it's certainly been a challenge, which is why we're excited to talk about it. And then similarly with students with extensive support needs, so those of us that offer both credentials, both mild to moderate and extensive support needs, we're also kind of noticing a lot of the overlap in many of the areas in the TPEs. But these are also kind of just really focused on a lot of the same things, those complex communication needs, supporting students with physical disabilities or mobility impairments, as well as that modification and support for access to the curriculum.
Awesome. I'm going to talk a little bit about what we're doing to address some of these things. And I know Mary in the chat said this is broadening. It's also in the new literacy standards. Yes, the broadening of these, the broadening or the blurring of these two credentials is across all the TPE areas. What are we doing at CSUN? At CSUN, what we're doing for traditional students, so these are the students that we have control over their placements, right? These are not our intern students who are working in school sites where they have jobs. So for our traditional students, we have worked hard to find placements that serve students with mild and extensive support needs. We know there are some public school campuses that don't serve students with extensive support needs. And so we are not placing our students at campuses that don't have the full range of students. And we also are ensuring that our candidates spend time supporting students with mild to moderate and extensive students with extensive support needs in general education settings. So that's another thing that we are focusing on in our selection of school sites is, okay, great. We have students there, but do students in those school sites have access to inclusive settings, or teachers, administration who are willing to support our students to provide that service, design that service? And that's, that has been a struggle to find those programs, but also is a wonderful way that we're supporting some schools that are trying to move towards more inclusive practices, through having more folks who are learning about those practices to come in, try things out, have their master teachers observe these supports. And so in terms of our observations, we focus less on the location and more on specially designed instruction and how our candidates are delivering that specially designed instruction to the full range of students through individual instruction, through small group, and through whole class instruction. And that can include co-teaching, which might mean sometimes our teachers are leading a small group center and the general education teacher has led the mini lesson with the whole group. And if that's the case, we'll say, oh, that's great, we got to see this. Next time we want to see you lead the whole group session, so that we can see a wide variety of instruction, so that we know this student has met all of those TPEs. We ensure we require that at least 3 of 6 observations in a semester must be in general education, with at least supporting at least one student with mild to moderate support needs in an observation in general ed, and at least one student with extensive support needs within core content instruction in a general education classroom. And in total, we want half and half of observations. So half observations supporting students with traditionally what we considered mild to moderate support needs, and half supporting students with more extensive or higher support needs. And then, this is just a breakdown here on the right showing that they need to provide a minimum of 2 to 3 observations a semester in the general education setting. And then they can have 0 to 2 in the special education setting. So they're not required to provide support or service in a separate special education setting, but they can a couple of times if that's another setting where they're receiving support from their master teacher. So this is a little different and maybe a little stickier with our interns, because our students in the intern program are full-time teachers of record of a group of students. And many of them teach in a separate special education classroom with one population of students. So not that broad range of students, but either just students with mild to moderate support needs or just students with extensive support needs. And so we support those students to find consistent and ongoing opportunities, so at least 3 hours a week, to support the broad range of students, right? The students they don't necessarily have access to supporting in the classroom they're in most of the time. And that does require some strategic planning. So we give some leeway at the beginning of the program. That first semester, we say, hey, get your feet settled in your position. We're going to support you to find opportunities to, if you're in a special day class, to step outside of that class in the next semesters. And so we work with them in a variety of ways. We might discuss with them ways they can push in service with the students they have. That could be through working to know, oh, when is a speech therapist coming to my classroom? That's a credentialed person. When they're delivering speech therapy to this group, I will support this group in the general education setting, or a variety of other strategies when students go to music or have special activities. That might be opportunities weekly to push support into a gen ed class with other students. We look at planning and prep times and how students might be able to use that to get out of their classrooms. We also discuss with administrators and the student opportunities or options to be released from the school site. Many of our interns are at special schools campuses, right? There are no opportunities within the school campus to go into a general education classroom because they don't exist in that space. And so in that case, we have worked with several interns to be released from a last period or have their prep time at a last period so that they can go to another campus to deliver service a couple or one time a week for that minimum of 3 hours. There are also some small cases where we haven't been able to work out a workable opportunity for students to get into and support the full range of students in general education settings. And for those students, we have found ways to provide a summer experience, either through local schools that provide inclusive summer options for education, or a new program we're trying to pilot at CSUN, which is a inclusive summer enrichment program. So those are some things we're doing at CSUN. Amy, I'm not sure if you want to add to that at all.
No, I think that was lovely.
All right.
Okay, so at UMass Global, we're in a little different situation because we're an online program and our candidates are distributed across the state. So I'm going to present kind of what we're doing and how we're meeting the standards, because we don't necessarily have the ability to find placements for all of our students on where they're at because they're so widely distributed, right? And we have candidates in some very rural areas and all of that. So that was kind of a tricky for us, right? How are we going to ensure that our candidates get experiences, you know, across the range of settings, in general education, in SDC, across the age ranges, everything. We wanted to make sure that we were able to do that. So what we did was we built our early fieldwork into our course assignments throughout the program. And what that means is that every course, every special education course, I should say, because our candidates do take some of the general ed courses as well, and that helps them meet some of the standards as well. But every special education course requires 25 hours of early fieldwork. It's separate from for our interns, and we have many, many, many interns. I think we're about 95+% interns. So it's separate from their internship work, but 25 hours of field work for them to observe and practice specific TPE elements for mild, moderate support needs and extensive support needs, so that those experiences are tied directly to TPEs, and the observations and the requirements are tied to the assignments in the courses. So we have very specific assignments that they have to do. Some of them are observations, some of them are more actually implementing interventions. And of those 25 hours, we usually allow X number of hours, up to 15, to be done in their classroom, in their setting, which means 10 hours across the term, the 8-week term, have to be completed outside of their classroom. And so we do similar things to what CSUN's doing, right? We talk to them about doing it on preps, or when their students are being served by another, by a specialist with a credential. On sometimes if they're in an early start school, we tell them to go to a school that ends late, or vice versa. If their school starts late, sometimes, you know, if they're teaching elementary starting later, sometimes they can go to a high school that starts earlier, although now that's kind of switched. But the other thing we've implemented is a fieldwork log of hours that in every course, they fill a fieldwork log of hours where they document the settings and the kind of broad disability categories that they're completing work in. So they have to document multiple hours in settings across the continuum, and they have to say how many hours they've spent working with and observing students with extensive support needs and mild, moderate support needs. They have to document that they've spent time in inclusive settings with those individuals, and they can also be in self-contained settings. We also allow, because again, we have a distributed system and we can't always guarantee that where that candidate is located, that they may be able to see a specific population. For example, observe someone with a traumatic brain injury to do that. So we have curated videos, and we're always looking for more great videos of quality teaching in settings and with populations that may be more difficult to observe in their area. So we kind of use that as a way to support them in getting the observations, getting access to observing that quality teaching, and then it's part of a coursework where they can have deep discussions about what they're doing and also demonstrate the TPEs. And then for our clinical practice, again, most of our candidates become interns. We have very few student teachers, and even fewer who are some of our student teachers are on a STIP or on a district internship. So we have very few who are traditionally placed with a master teacher. So we often think about this from an intern point of view, but we address our clinical practice through online collaborative meetings with the candidate, their university supervisor, and their master teacher or support provider. We use GoReact to do observations, and that's how we also do some of the coaching and co-planning and feedback with them. So they get feedback with annotations on their videos from their clinical practice. But there are also planning and coaching meetings that happen regularly throughout the term with the candidate, with their university supervisor, and their support provider or master teacher. So everyone's involved in supporting that student, providing feedback, helping them co-plan, helping them meet their caseload responsibilities, and to do all that so we can support them and ensure they're making appropriate progress towards achieving the TPEs, and then preparing to complete and submit the TPA. So that's kind of, in a nutshell, how we're doing it in a distributed online system. So now we want to talk about what you guys are doing, right? We want to be able to share ideas. We were kind of talking about what we were doing as a way to spark ideas and have you thinking. And so and I'm going to escape here for a second. We have a little Jamboard activity. So let me get this link, and I'm going to put it in the chat. And I'm going to try and put it in the chat. There it is. And so what we want everyone to do is just take 5 minutes and just post a sticky. For those of you who haven't done this before, you grab a sticky note and you will write what you're doing, and you save it, and then it's on the screen. So this is just a quick 5 minute just to help do a little brainstorming, kind of start to share ideas. And then after this, then we're just going to open it up to discussion and sharing ideas. So take a couple minutes, quick, very short comment. I mean, feel free to type what you want, but we're just going to take about 5 minutes to do this activity to just get people to start thinking and sharing what you're doing at your sites and how you're supporting students in clinical practice with higher support needs. And I see people popping on and getting ready, so that's great. So similar practice for our interns currently starting a residency and need ideas. We can absolutely be talking about residency ideas. And I'm going to kind of take notes just to when we move out of the screen, or we can stay here to spur our discussion as we move from paper to voice. 8 observations, 2 informal, DigiCoach. We have a rubric that is aligned with the TPEs and current standards. We will have to revamp with literacy standards. Yeah, those literacy standards coming, I think, are going to be it's a whole other thing that we're doing, which fortunately we're going to have another community of practice discussion about. So we also use GoReact for formal observations. There's a rubric that utilizes the TPEs embedded into GoReact. Excellent.
I'm definitely wondering if people want to add it into their post-its. You know, if there are things that you're doing to promote that access to general education, especially maybe when there's limited options in your region.
Mhm.
Certainly something that we're really working with our districts on. And I wouldn't say, despite kind of the little overview that we just gave, I would not say that we have it mastered by any means.
I'm just kind of moving the post-it notes around as they come up, just so we can all see them. We have a shared Google e-portfolio embedded with the formal and informal activities with the practicum supervisor. The Gen Ed requirements are embedded too. We pick the brains of veteran teachers and follow the rubric provided by our site. We also use Go React. Residency model where candidates have year-long student teaching opportunities to sub 1 to 2 days a week in varied settings as well. Rubric with TPEs and Go React observations, 12 observations, 5 per semester 1 and 7 semester 2. We use Go React and are discussing how to observe for literacy TPEs next year. Example, do we have 1 or 2 literacy focused observations? Great question. I don't know if we want to pop it back here now to just the discussion. And maybe I'm actually going to stop sharing. So just sharing about the your ideas, successes, challenges. Sometimes I think it can be easier to start with challenges and brainstorm together. Because usually that's where people's minds are focused on what they're struggling with more than what they're doing well. So, you know, you're welcome to keep your cameras off. You can turn them on, but I see here in a chat too. Oh, yes, please go ahead.
I'm very interested if the person who wrote about the new course that requires Gen Ed mini lessons, I don't, you know, not to call you out, but if you would be interested in sharing more about that, I'll just speak for myself that I'm really interested in that. I see it and I see some thumbs up, so I'm not the only one.
Yeah, and I'm going to share that board screen again.
Yeah, will you tell us about it?
I can't say it's perfect, but we embedded a new course during the new credential structure called Methods and Procedures for Inclusive Settings. So it requires observations in the SPED setting as well as the Gen Ed setting. So we don't have a specific like TPA course for teaching performance assessment, but I kind of made it and kind of shaped it that way a little bit. That way they go in, do demonstration, do guided practice, do independent practice, so that kind of prepares them also for the TPAs. We've been only doing it for about a year now, and so far we've had like 3 candidates pass their TPAs. So I'm still waiting and seeing. It's trial and error. It's difficult getting that buy-in because they don't, the Gen Ed teachers don't want recordings unless it's the TPAs literally happening. So we're like, okay, get back of their head, do something, because we want to see you hooking them in, engaging them and doing all those components so that they're not thrown off as soon as they go into student teaching or internship. Hope I answered that. And we also do DigiCoach. So if anyone wants to know about that, that's a really great program.
What is that? I haven't heard of that.
DigiCoach has helped us with our observation. I know we were going to use Go React. It sounds like a lot of people are using Go React on here, but it is basically a rubric that we designed specifically for our students. They work with multiple universities, even admin, and they helped us develop everything aligned with the California teacher. Is it the standard professional standards? Sorry, my brain. And also the TPEs, so that when the university supervisor goes in, say they're doing a virtual observation or they're doing an in-person observation, it allows them to click on what they're seeing at that time, and also provides coaching tips and strategies aligned specific to either those areas that they're doing really well or those areas that need improvement. And we've been using DigiCoach, I'd say probably for about 6 years now, and have been continuing to use it. So we'll see. Now we have the literacy standards and I'm like, oh no, I got to do it again. So yeah. Hope I answered your questions.
No, that was great. Oh, I just got a text here. Can you put a link for this tool?
Yeah, Shannon, I think they're asking for DigiCoach. Yeah,
Yeah.
be great. She says that thumbs up.
He would love that. Brandon is his name if you want to email him as well. They're really on it.
So Joyce asked if anyone was doing clinical practice in a residency model and how it differs. We have a very small residency program, so I don't feel like I may be the best person to talk about that, but is there someone who has some good residency program experience who maybe could talk about how that works there?
Hi. So I'm from Teachers College of San Joaquin. We have a residency program here. And Karen Campese, she's my partner. She's also on here. So you can jump in, Karen. But we have, I think she wrote the blue one there. The residency model, it's a year-long program that they're in student teaching. So they're there from like the beginning of the school year and they follow that same mentor all the way through until the end of the school year. And they're there on an average of about 3 days a week. And then they're able to still substitute about 1 to 2 days. So they're still getting that classroom exposure. They're still getting the clinical practice, but they also have that opportunity to make money. There's 12 observations that they do. They have a supervisor, and we use Go React for that. And then they have their mentor there with them as support. Karen, what else?
I would say the biggest difference is that the amount of flexibility that can happen in the residency program in terms of being able to go and observe in a variety of different settings. And so we try to encourage our mentors to help out and then our partners to help out as well to find different settings. But I was just texting back and forth with Tiani about the idea of, because we've never really been great at ensuring that our residents are seeing a variety of different experiences. And so having the fieldwork log that someone mentioned where there's specific things that they have to, do, observe, participate in. So that's something that we will definitely embed.
It's so our program does that. And I have to say that it was our school psychology program that started with the log, and we adapted it from them because our school counseling person is amazing with technology, but it really has been great. It's a simple Google spreadsheet, and it allows tracking, and you can even calculate it. It automatically calculates so the students can really see as they're going through what they've done and where their holes are, right? Because we have to have them self-managed to a large degree. Are you getting those, right? And we have some classes where we're very specific, right? This class, you have to do an observation in this setting. You have to do an observation in that setting. You have to do an observation in that kind of setting. But for some of our other classes, it's here's the assignments, here's the hours. Some of it can be done in your classroom. Some of it has to be done out. But you have to determine the settings by what's available and by, is there a hole you need to fill? Is there a setting or a disability, category that you haven't yet? Broad disability categories. We don't do it by each disability category, but have you seen mild, moderate support needs in a self-contained setting? Have you seen extensive support needs in an inclusive setting, for example? And grade levels too, actually, that's always a challenge. What are other challenges that people are having, or questions that people have? Thank you for putting the DigiCoach link in too.
I guess I'm wondering what people do related to how much choice we give our candidates. So because I do feel like, and I think that I don't think it's a bad thing, but because of how clear those clinical practice guidelines are around the range of students and the range of settings, I feel like we've really used that, when maybe we have candidates who they really only want to teach in a self-contained setting, or they really only want to serve students with specific learning disabilities. And we go back, I actually pull up, those are slides that I've used with candidates to talk about the guidelines, and here are the things that we need to make sure that you do by the end of your program, and here's the things that we need to evaluate you on. And I think that it has helped us to expand the experiences that our candidates get, and then they still, of course, can make those choices when they finish and they have their credentials. But I guess I'm wondering, to what degree, like, when you get those types of questions, like, I don't want to teach in an inclusive setting, or I don't want to teach this population of students, whether you allow for that or whether you kind of, like we do you go back to those guidelines and say, I'm sorry, you have to get all the experiences? I'm really curious. Or you don't want to talk about that?
I was going to say, I feel like we're all the teachers waiting
That's okay.
for someone to speak up and share.
I can
Remember, there are no
comment.
wrong answers.
I can comment. I mean, it's not particularly, groundbreaking, but I think what we say when our candidates, like say they're an intern and they're working in a self-contained, setting, maybe even at a special school, and they like push back around having to learn how to teach like reading or something, right? And they're like, oh, I don't work with that population, or, and we say, you know what, it's our job to prepare you to teach with the full range of students that your credential is, preparing you to work with. So it's not our job to teach you how to teach your current group of students, but to be prepared, because you don't know where you're going to end up. You might think that this is where, you're going to be, but the reality is a lot of times, new teachers don't have a lot of choice and control where they end up. So, I mean, and that's how we handle that, and we just build in as many opportunities as we can for them to have the full range of experiences, like other people were sharing, different models and things like that. But I think that's kind of like that's just what we say, and we don't really get, maybe they don't like it, but we feel like that's our job, is to to teach them, what they need for the credential they're earning, not where they're currently teaching.
Thanks, Bonnie. That's really validating. Kendra, do you want to add? Oh, we can't hear you. Yeah, it doesn't look like you're muted, but we can't hear you. Okay, she's trying to figure out her sound. Maybe maybe we'll go to Susan. It looked like maybe you had something you wanted to add, and then we can go back to Kendra. Susan, did you have?
Hello.
Oh,
Hello.
yeah, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Yeah, I can wait now that I've got it figured out.
Go for it.
Okay, so I'm not from a university. I am the new teacher induction coordinator for a high school district. And we have a lot of, I'd say of our 26 candidates, we have half that are some type of special education credential. And so in just listening to this, so I'm on here because I'm trying to understand, what are they coming to me with the TPEs and the changes from the mild, mod, severe to the new credentials. And just in listening to this, I will absolutely say this year alone, we had to move one candidate from mild mod into a mod severe, where the majority of the students have some type of emotional disturbance or traumatic brain injury. And so they're definitely not feeling prepared. And so as I'm listening to this again, outsider, have any of the universities considered doing like a medical rotation? Like when people are in med school, they have to like sample each of the disciplines for a month. So like instead, like I totally get it. Like if somebody's like, I know I don't want to do this for working with, students that are emotionally disturbed, but instead of it being like a year-long thing, could they do 6-week rotations, or is that just pie in the sky for availability of what's out there?
I think that's really interesting. I think that, one of our barriers is that they do have to do their ed TPA, and that does require that they have some more kind of extended knowledge with a focused learner, at least for their culminating experience, whether it's student teaching or they're an intern, whatever that is. But that doesn't mean that that is not an option in some circumstances. That's interesting. I don't know if others, but
I was gonna say, I think one of the things that sounds like a lot of us are struggling is access and time for our candidates to be able to go to sites like that. So it may be helpful, for districts like you or others to say, hey, we would love to have candidates from the universities in our area or the education preparation programs in our area come and do some observation or some time to do that, to give that experience, because I think the hardest part for us is just knowing where those are and who would be open to having our students come. So that access problem, I think, is for our program. I know that access is always kind of an issue that we always struggle with. I see a few other people nodding. So I think those district and university partnerships are so important, where districts like you can say, hey, we would love to have you come and observe in this classroom, so that if, when we're hiring teachers, they understand what they may be getting into. I know also quality videos of some of those harder to find settings and populations of really quality teaching. If you know that you have a site that has that, and maybe, allowing someone to come in and shoot, a video of X amount of time, so that candidates who maybe can't physically get there have a way to actually see what happens and what quality teaching in those programs looks like. That's something I keep thinking about. Like, I want more ways for our students to see quality teaching, to know what they should be doing, to see that state of the art teaching practices. Because sometimes when they go in, depending on the district they're in, they're not necessarily seeing state of the art or anything close to it, and we're undoing some of what they're learning. I don't know if anybody else has had that experience or thoughts about that, but those were mine.
I was just gonna say, and I'm speaking from months of experience. So I just started this role in the fall, and I'm still learning all of it. And I have single subject, multiple subject, and ed specialist for my university. But for our ed specialist program, we do try to put them in 2 different placements. One being lower, like K5, K8, and then the other one being 6-12. However, what we find is, like, our communities want to hire the ed specialist candidates as interns because they need to fill a role. And so being able to give them multiple opportunities with a full teacher workload is very difficult. So typically the ones that get to experience the 2 different experiences are undergraduate integrated pathways. And then our graduate students are really, most of them are hired as full-time teachers of record.
Can I ask a question? Are there any, for these interns, what are some, I'm interested if there are any like creative strategies you've found to get that additional practice that is needed for those TPs that isn't available necessarily in their assigned full-time classroom.
or are you all just struggling and problem solving the way we are?
mean, one of the things that we've been doing is that, I mean, the residencies have been very helpful for us. We have two, I'm in San Diego, and we have two residencies that we're starting on our second year with them. And then we have another one coming on board in the fall. And what's nice is they're funded through CTC, and the candidates can get about $35,000 to support their credential. And so a lot of them are choosing this pathway as opposed to the intern route, especially because our model is, I put the sticky on there. It sounds like other schools are having something similar where they're 3 days a week in their residency classroom, and then the other 2 days they're substituting. So it's an opportunity to not only get additional classroom experience, more varied experience, but also earn some additional money. But also what's nice is the mentor teacher, we have in these districts, we have like they're called like beginning, like teacher leaders. And so all the mentor teachers that have residents are released usually about 1 day a month, and the resident takes over the class, the mentor teacher goes, and they're learning and having professional development around how to be a teacher leader at their site. And so it's PD for them. And then related to the interns, we also have it where these residents can provide relief to an intern so they can go and see other classrooms and have other experiences. So having these teacher residents, not only are they getting quality instruction, they're not having to work as an intern for income, and it just provides some growth opportunities for others that are at the site or within the district. So it's been very successful for us. We have, we don't have as many interns as we did at one time. And I think it's because we're really starting to build out these residency models, and it's a win-win because then the districts are, getting their future employees, from day one. And so they're learning those communities and all of that. It's just been a real positive thing for us.
I love that idea of the residents being able to go and help the interns, right? Because it allows both of them to get different experiences and observations too. And the subbing, I thought, what a great idea.
Yeah. They all have to get their 30-day sub permits as part of being hired as a resident, or they're hired by the district from day one.
Nice.
Please state again who the residents are and what their qualifications are.
The residents for us are candidates in our Ed Specialist program. So they're either getting their mild mod support needs credential or their extensive support needs credential. And they're either in our 2-semester program, or they're in the second year of our 4-semester program. So they're all people that are doing it in their final year of our credential program. So they'll graduate in, say, May, and then they'll be the teacher of record starting in the fall as part of their service agreement. So it's a 4-year service agreement to the district as part of the residency. And then they get $35,000. So they get for 10 months, they get a $3,500 stipend that supports them while they're in their program. And then they also have those opportunities for the substitute teaching up to 2 days a week, which provides additional income. And they don't have to do that. If they want to do 1 day a week and then they want one to spend on their coursework and things like that, that's fine. Like, it's not a requirement, but it's an opportunity.
Great, thank you for explaining that.
Thank you, Amy, for posting the link to the CTC office hours for drop-in questions too. I do think that they're a great resource. I saw the question, there's a question in the chat about having a panel. I love the idea of a panel for content. But Amy, as you were saying, I'm not sure that would meet early fieldwork experience hours. Susan, you raised your hand. Go ahead.
Yes, I did. Okay, when we were talking about the residency program, I understood that student teachers now are there's a possibility that they would be getting paid as student teachers. I don't know if this is happening through California, but I did hear about it for LAUSD that it was possible. Does anybody know anything about that?
No.
Because there's such a teacher shortage that I think it would entice a lot of student teachers. So they would complete, obviously they need to have more courses completed, but before they do this, before they student teach, but I think it would be a good way to get student teachers into the workforce. But I did hear about it, and honestly, it came through somewhere from this. I thought it was from the state, and I think it would be an excellent idea.
So there have been from CTC a large number of residency grants available, and some of the sponsoring schools or districts that are taking residents are able to provide a stipend for residents. Sometimes it's through the grant, and some have been able to make it kind of a sustainable option. And some of those residencies also allow like 1 to 2 days a week of substitute teaching or working as an aide or something that allows them to get some income at the same time. I know that's not really why we're here today, but
no,
yeah.
No, this is something different. I'm not talking about the residency program at all. I'm just talking about just student teachers in general could, receive pay, and it would be a faster route for them too. And also another thing on another sideline is that we talk so much about TPEs and all this stuff, and we don't realize how bogged down our interns and student teachers are with IEPs, well, mostly our interns. And that's such a big part of their job, and it's just hardly talked about. And they really, I hear their concerns so many times that they're bogged down, they've got all these caseloads and they don't know what to do. And then they have to do all the extra TPE, observations. I'm just saying, it was just that I feel their pain, let's say. And we want teachers, where that, there's a shortage. So I wonder why we're doing all this.
Thank you, Susan.
Okay, that's all.
Thanks. We have about 2 more minutes before we wrap up. We want to be respectful of time. But are there any last minute comments, questions? Our next session, thank you, Amy, is Thursday, May 9th. So kind of same bat time, same bat station. We'll be here and we'll be talking about ESN and literacy, right? Am I remember?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
application of those literacy standards to kind of that full range of students.
Yeah. So I know that is a burning thing for everybody. And again, we want this to be a place where people can share with each other and get ideas and all of that. So thank you all for coming. I see people are starting to head out, but thanks everyone for coming. We hope to see you next time. I hope it was helpful. And this is something we want to continue and have moving forward, to be a place where we can really share with each other and help each other, because when we do that, we help our candidates, right? And we help our students with disabilities.
Somebody asked if we're going to send out the recording, and it will be on the CEDAR YouTube page, right, Annie?
Yeah, so I'm going to send out a link to the recording and the slideshows to everybody who has registered. And then additionally, we will download the recording to a YouTube, we'll upload the recording to our YouTube channel so that you can also view it there. But I'll make sure that the slides are there. And somebody asked for the program log of hours. So I have to make a shareable version because I can't necessarily share all the links to all the assignments we have. But I will make a shareable version so you can see how it's set up and perhaps even adapt it. Yeah, there's way too much on the plate of our students. I think we all feel that and feel that for them. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Have a great day, and I hope to see you in a month. And I'm gonna stop the recording.